Welcome, deep divers. We're about to dive headfirst into a story that, well, on the surface, it defies pretty much every single piece of conventional wisdom you've ever heard about Silicon Valley, about building a tech company, about making billions. I mean, imagine an app. It was built with absolutely no ads,
Zero.
no data tracking, no flashy, attention-grabbing gimmicks.
Right.
It had this radical, almost stubborn commitment to user privacy and just simplicity.
Yeah.
And this app, it ends up selling for an astronomical $19 billion,
19 billion. It's staggering.
making its co-founder, Jan Koum, a multi-billionaire. His net worth, projected around $16.5 billion by 2025. It just feels impossible, right?
It really does. And what's truly fascinating here, and I think what we'll really unpack today, is that Jan Koum didn't start with any of the advantages, the typical Silicon Valley connections we usually hear about.
Right. No Stanford dorm room story here.
No, exactly. He came from incredibly humble beginnings. A small Ukrainian village, a place where privacy was basically a foreign concept. Phone lines were routinely tapped by the government.
Wow.
And food scarcity was just a constant gnawing reality. So to go from that environment, then arriving in America at 16 with his mother on food stamps,
Barely speaking English.
barely speaking English, yeah. And then to eventually sign a $19 billion deal in the very same welfare office where he once got assistance. I mean, that trajectory, it's just a powerful testament to a completely unconventional path.
It's more than just mind-boggling. It feels like a direct challenge to that whole move fast and break things mantra that, dominates the tech world.
Absolutely.
The money, sure, it's eye-popping.
Yeah.
But like you said, the most captivating part of this deep dive isn't really the wealth itself, it's the how. How did WhatsApp get so huge by doing less than everybody else? It was built without the usual playbook, right? No ads, no constant chase for new flashy features, no invasive tracking. Instead, it was this almost revolutionary, you could say stubborn, focus on privacy, on simplicity, and on doing one single thing really, really well.
Just nailing that one thing.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for us, for anyone maybe building something today? Our mission in this deep dive is to explore how Jan Koum's unique minimalist mindset, his radical discipline, and his outright refusal to play the Silicon Valley game led to WhatsApp's massive success,
Yeah.
all while never compromising on these deeply held core principles. It feels like a shortcut to understanding a whole different way of building, of winning, and maybe even defining what success really means.
And to really get the essence of Jan Koum's approach, we have to rewind, go back to his formative years in Soviet Ukraine.
Okay.
Picture this childhood. Small, remote village, daily life without even basic things like hot water. And more critically, it was a world where personal privacy was just constantly under attack. Government agents routinely listening in on phone calls.
You mentioned that. That's chilling.
Yeah. Mail being opened and read, free speech punished. His mother was a housewife, father a construction manager, and as the Soviet Union's political and economic situation got worse, the family situation just became untenable.
So they had to leave.
They did. In a desperate bid for freedom, for opportunity, Jan and his mother fled to California. He was just 16.
16.
Left everything behind, arrived with basically nothing but the clothes on their backs and this, profound sense of displacement.
That's such a stark contrast to the typical narratives we hear from tech founders, isn't it?
Completely.
And these weren't just hardships. They sound like deep, soul-shaping experiences that basically hard-coded certain values into his DNA.
Absolutely. That constant threat of surveillance, the lack of personal freedom,
Right.
it didn't just teach him to value privacy, it ingrained it as this absolute fundamental necessity, almost like a form of survival.
Privacy as survival. That's a powerful frame.
For Koum, privacy wasn't some abstract idea or, a luxury feature you add later. It felt existential.
Right.
And that perspective on personal data, on confidentiality, it's just fundamentally different from many in tech who might see it as, a compliance checkbox or something you trade for features.
Can you maybe elaborate a bit on how that feeling, that sense of survival, might have impacted his very first thoughts about building a product? Like a communication product.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. If your childhood teaches you that communication can be a trap, that every word you say might be listened to, then the very act of building a tool for communication, it becomes loaded with a different kind of responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not just about efficiency anymore.
Exactly. It's about safeguarding. It's about protection. So this core trauma, in a way, it transformed into a foundational principle for WhatsApp. They weren't just building a messenger, they were trying to build a kind of sanctuary for conversations.
A sanctuary.
That's such a critical distinction. Okay, so they arrive in Mountain View, California, Jan's 16, but this isn't the Google-powered VC-buzzing tech hub we think of today, right?
Not at all. This was pre-dot-com boom, pre-hype Mountain View.
Yeah.
Much quieter.
Right.
Yan and his mother settle into this cramped apartment. Their daily life is completely dependent on food stamps.
Wow.
Yan starts cleaning floors at a local grocery store after school, working long hours just to help out.
Just trying to survive.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then things get even harder. His mother is diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, no.
Which makes public assistance their absolute only lifeline. These experiences, this acute poverty, this total dependence, they weren't just difficult, they were transformative.
So how did that immediate, tangible experience with scarcity, with relying on public aid, how did that shape his fundamental relationship with money?
Well, it profoundly rewired his brain, I think. Not just about money itself, but about value, about utility. He wasn't just frugal in the way we normally think of it.
He developed what you might call a fiercely intentional money mindset. Every single dollar, every single resource, it had a job.
Right.
Every purchase needed a clear, undeniable reason. The idea of luxury wasn't just unnecessary. To him, it felt like a liability, a drain on precious resources.
So it wasn't just about saving money.
No, it was a fundamental shift in how he saw value, necessity, what's truly an asset versus a burden. And this money mindset, it wasn't something he just outgrew once he became wealthy.
No.
In fact, it's intrinsically linked to how he approached building WhatsApp. Not just financially, but philosophically. It informed like every single decision about the product itself.
How so? Can you give me an example?
Well, just like he wouldn't spend $1 unnecessarily in his personal life, he wouldn't spend a line of code or a development hour on a feature that didn't serve the absolute core need, reliable private messaging.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. And here's where it gets really interesting, because this mindset, it stuck with him. Long after he had more money than he could ever possibly spend.
Right.
Even when WhatsApp had hundreds of millions of users. When he was already incredibly wealthy, Jan still refused to hire a PR team.
No PR wild.
Didn't buy a flashy car. Drove a modest Porsche, apparently. Barely gave interviews. Stayed largely invisible. And even after Facebook bought WhatsApp for that insane $19 billion, Jan was still often seen sitting at the same old desk using a phone with a cracked screen.
Yeah, the cracked screen story is legendary.
Most people, I think, would just assume that's humility, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the humble billionaire.
Sure, that's the easy take.
But the source material we looked at makes it clear. It wasn't about humility, it was about clarity.
Exactly. Clarity. To him, excess was just distraction. And distraction, in his view, was the enemy of making great products.
Okay.
Think of it this way. For most companies, growth and marketing are totally intertwined, right? They spend cycles crafting PR stories, going to conferences, dealing with media.
All the time.
For Koum, every hour spent on something other than perfecting that core messaging experience was basically an hour wasted. He didn't want to build an empire of noise. He wanted something clean, honest, essential.
So that laser focus meant, what, no internal debates about marketing campaigns or public perception?
Pretty much. Every engineering hour, every decision went straight to core functionality. Money, for Jan Koum, it wasn't for flexing, as the source put it.
Right, not for showing off.
No, or for buying status symbols. It was for staying free.
Staying free. Free from what?
Free from external pressures, free from distractions, free to build exactly what he envisioned. And that's the paradox most people miss. He didn't get rich by chasing wealth or status in the usual way.
Right.
He got rich by rigorously avoiding everything he thought diluted true value and freedom.
That's such a countercultural approach, especially in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It really challenges our standard definitions of success.
It really does. It's a powerful statement that, quiet, unwavering focus, unburdened by all the usual startup trappings, can actually yield immense results.
And that relentless clarity, it also defined their product strategy, didn't it?
Absolutely.
In a tech world that's just obsessed with growth hacks, constant notifications, attention-grabbing design, Jan Koum made what felt like a truly radical choice. He decided to build an app that did one thing. And, crucially, it would never interrupt the user.
Yeah, that never interrupt idea was huge.
So when he co-founded WhatsApp in 2009 with Brian Acton, they weren't trying to build the next flashy social network or a gaming platform or another content feed. Their goal was singular. How do you let people message each other anywhere in the world, instantly, privately, and without any noise or manipulation?
And that singular focus meant deliberately avoiding pretty much everything that's become standard in tech now.
Like what specifically?
Well, no ads, none. No banners, no pop-ups, no video ads interrupting things.
Okay.
It meant no constant pushes to share your location or contacts, no algorithmic feeds trying to guess what you want, and absolutely no manipulative design tricks.
Just clean, fast, secure messaging.
That was it. Nothing more. It was the exact opposite of the flashy social network trend that was blowing up around them then.
Right, platforms designed to maximize engagement through notifications and endless feeds and data capture.
Exactly. WhatsApp, by contrast, wanted to be almost an invisible product, something that just worked, slipped into your life without demanding attention or messing with your behavior.
Imagine that world where your apps just did their job and then got out of the way.
That was the vision.
And central to that vision was Jan Koum's profound allergy to advertising. You mentioned this wasn't just business, it was philosophy.
Deeply philosophical, yeah. Directly linked back to his experiences in Ukraine. He truly believed ads incentivize all the wrong things. User tracking, data mining, constant distraction.
And he had that famous quote, right? When advertising is involved, you, the user, are the product.
Exactly. It cuts right to the core of so much of the modern internet. And for him, it directly brought back that feeling of being watched, of not owning your own space.
Wow. So the implication of that is huge.
It's profound. If your business model relies on selling user attention via ads, then the user is the commodity. Their data gets harvested, their behavior tracked, their attention sold off.
So instead of that
path, WhatsApp chose that symbolic $1 per year fee after the first year.
which wasn't really about making massive revenue initially, was it?
No, not primarily. It was about setting a clear precedent, defining the relationship. Koum's thinking was clear. If you're paying even just $1, you're our customer, not the advertiser.
Okay, that's a clear line.
It wasn't just a pricing strategy. The source calls it a protest. A direct protest against the business models that, in his view, had turned the internet into a surveillance machine.
Profiting from user data instead of just serving user needs.
Precisely. It was a defiant stand rooted in those early experiences with government surveillance where lack of privacy meant everything. This approach made it clear. WhatsApp was a utility, a tool you paid for, not some free service that secretly extracts its cost from your personal info.
And what's truly incredible about this strategy, or maybe this lack of conventional strategy, was its impact on their growth. It felt almost crazy in the Silicon Valley context.
Totally counterintuitive.
They had no data collection, no analytics tracking clicks, no A/B testing optimizing signups, no dedicated growth team.
None of the usual machinery.
It was just this tiny, focused engineering crew, laser-focused on making WhatsApp invisible, making it just work.
Right.
And you know what happened? It worked so unbelievably well that people had to tell their friends.
Word of mouth, the old-fashioned way.
Exactly. They shared it organically. Millions joined, then hundreds of millions. By 2014, WhatsApp exploded to over 400 million monthly active users.
400 million.
All achieved with a minuscule team of just 55 employees.
55. That efficiency is it's almost unheard of. Companies with a fraction of that user base often have hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
It just highlights the immense, maybe overlooked, power of word of mouth and organic growth when a product genuinely solves a real problem and puts the user experience, privacy, reliability first.
Above everything else.
They didn't need to shout because the product itself just whispered its quality.
And that leads us right to the ultimate irony, doesn't it?
The Facebook acquisition.
All this quiet, principle-driven success built on this anti-ad, anti-data tracking philosophy. It catches the eye of the biggest social media giant in the world. Facebook comes knocking.
And pays $19 billion.
$19 billion for a company that fundamentally didn't believe in their entire business model.
The company built on total user privacy, bought by the world's biggest ad-driven data machine.
What Facebook saw wasn't a revenue engine. WhatsApp's revenue was tiny then.
Right.
They saw an astonishingly engaged user base built on trust and utility, something Facebook's own model kind of struggled to replicate genuinely.
So the acquisition itself proved the power of saying no.
In a way, yes. It forced even Facebook to recognize the immense, almost intangible value of a product built on principles they fundamentally opposed, just because it had achieved such incredible user adoption and loyalty.
Absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And it really makes you wonder, how did someone keep that kind of clarity, that focus, amidst all that explosive growth and those billion-dollar numbers?
Well, it comes down to Jan Koum's unseen engine, his habits of focus and his unshakable principles.
Right. While most tech founders are out chasing headlines, building personal brands, speaking at conferences, doing TED Talks, orchestrating big product launches.
Jan Koum just vanished into his work.
Yeah. No Instagram feed of his amazing life, no public appearances, no grand stage announcements, just silence.
Silence and this deep, almost obsessive focus on the product itself. His daily routine was, by all accounts, brutally consistent, almost monastic.
How so?
He'd come into the WhatsApp office, often wearing the same kind of clothes, sit at his old, simple wooden desk, open his laptop, and he'd code.
Just code, not the flamboyant CEO image.
Not at all. Not the visionary sketching on whiteboards constantly. Meetings were minimal, almost non-existent.
Oh.
Marketing, non-existent. Office perks like fancy cafeterias or game rooms, forget it.
No ping pong tables.
Definitely no ping pong tables. Even as WhatsApp exploded globally, Koum flat out refused to turn the company into what he probably saw as a startup circus. No corporate slogans, and certainly no move fast and break things.
Which often just leads to buggy, bloated products anyway.
Right. He apparently once said something like, "We just want to build something people use. That's it. No fluff, no noise."
No fluff, no noise. That philosophy, it embodies what you might call compound effort, right? Consistent, focused, small improvements over time.
Exactly. Rather than hustle culture, which often values visible activity over real output.
And that stripped-down approach probably fostered a super focused, efficient engineering team too.
Very likely. Fewer distractions, less internal politics. Every resource channeled straight into the core product, cutting out anything that didn't directly help its main job.
And those principles, they extended directly to features too, didn't they? Like an unwritten constitution for the app.
Yeah, he had these unshakable rules. For instance, he famously resisted allowing read receipts, those little check marks showing a message was read.
Oh yeah, I remember when those came in.
He only allowed them when users absolutely demanded it, and even then he made it an opt-out feature.
Right.
And he resisted adding voice calls for years.
Years.
Yeah.
Competitors were rushing that feature out.
Because he didn't want to compromise the performance or reliability of the core messaging. That was paramount. He simply refused to add any feature that didn't serve one single purpose.
Right.
Clear, reliable, fast messaging.
And this really highlights his deep, almost visceral user empathy.
Absolutely. Consider this detail. It's really telling. His team meticulously used BlackBerry phones for testing.
Blackberries, long after they were considered obsolete in like the US and Europe.
Exactly. Because he knew that millions of users in developing countries still relied on them for basic communication.
Wow. So he wasn't building for the Silicon Valley bubble.
No, not for SV personas or the latest trend. He was building for real people with real fundamental communication needs, often in places with bad networks. It's a powerful, concrete example of truly understanding and prioritizing your actual users above everything else.
That's incredible user empathy.
It really is. So while other CEOs were chasing valuations, building hype for the next big feature, Koum was quietly building something much more fundamental. Trust.
Trust, which, as you said in tech, is arguably the most undervalued asset.
Totally. Often the first thing sacrificed for growth, for data, for ad revenue, for engagement metrics.
Yeah.
But Koum showed that trust is actually the ultimate currency for a product that truly serves its users.
And that trust wasn't built through marketing.
No, it was earned through consistent reliability, unwavering privacy, and a product that just worked, exactly as promised, with no hidden agendas. That trust built loyalty, which drove that powerful organic growth, creating a networked effect money alone just couldn't buy.
Which brings us to the ultimate stand, the culmination of all these principles, privacy and his eventual quiet exit from Facebook.
Yeah, it all circles back to that deeply ingrained belief we talked about earlier.
Right. Jan Koum didn't just value privacy, he lived it, breathed it, coded it into the company's DNA.
Growing up in Soviet Ukraine, government listening to calls, opening mail, punishing free speech, privacy wasn't just nice to have, it was survival. A basic human right constantly denied.
And that deep belief was, as the source described it, hard-coded into WhatsApp from day one.
No data collection, no metadata retention, so no record of who you called or when, and crucially, no message backups on WhatsApp's own servers. The messages only lived on the user's devices.
That's key.
Then, in 2016, under his leadership, WhatsApp hit this huge milestone. First global messaging platform to roll out end-to-end encryption by default. for over 1 billion users.
1 billion users, that was revolutionary.
It really was. It meant messages were scrambled from sender to receiver, and only they had the digital key to unlock them. Unreadable even by WhatsApp itself.
Or governments, or intelligence agencies.
Or any third party, which, raises that important question. In a world worried about data security and breaches, what are the real trade-offs in committing so strongly to user confidentiality?
And why haven't more platforms done it by default, even now?
Exactly. But for Koum, there were no trade-offs on this. It was non-negotiable.
Which must have caused friction after the Facebook acquisition.
Huge friction. When Facebook bought WhatsApp in 2014, Koum made his conditions crystal clear. No ads, no tracking, no compromise on encryption.
And Facebook agreed.
Explicitly agreed at the time, but by 2016, just 2 years later, the pressure started mounting internally.
From Facebook teams.
Yeah. Driven by their core ad business model, they began pushing hard for data sharing across platforms, for targeted advertising inside WhatsApp.
Wow, ads inside WhatsApp.
And even subtly suggesting ways to maybe weaken the encryption for future monetization. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a fundamental clash of philosophies, a battle for WhatsApp's soul.
And Koum.
Koum said no, repeatedly, refused to budge on any of his core principles, despite immense pressure from his parent company, the biggest social media giant on Earth.
That must have been intense.
Incredibly. This internal conflict simmered until 2018, when he, quietly but definitively, resigned.
Just walked away.
Walked away. And think about the magnitude. He left billions, with a B, in unvested stock options on the table.
Billions. Money he technically earned but hadn't vested yet?
Right. This wasn't a financial loss for Koum, though. It was a refusal to lose himself, as the source put it so well.
He could have stayed, played the game.
Absolutely. Could have played along, slowly compromised, cashed out every last dollar, taken the easy path many founders take when their vision clashes with the acquirer.
But he didn't.
Instead, he walked away with his values intact, made a statement louder than any press release. In a world where people might subtly compromise, sell out quietly, he left loudly through his silence and his action.
It was a billion-dollar stand.
And for him, it cost him nothing worth keeping. Because his principles were non-negotiable. He chose integrity over yet more fortune.
Which brings us right to this idea of the ultimate superpower in action. The superpower is saying no.
Yeah.
Because in the startup world, success usually looks and sounds really loud, right? Founders pitching constantly, raising millions, scaling fast, saying yes to everything.
Chasing growth at all costs.
Yan Koum did the exact opposite. Built a multi-billion-dollar company by doing less, by saying no, way more often than he said yes. So what does this really mean for how we think about success, how we build anything?
Well, it means fundamentally challenging that conventional wisdom. Yan Koum said no to ads, no to PR, no to tracking, no to distractions.
No to office perks that didn't help the product.
Right. No to external pressures that diluted his core vision. And by doing that, he achieved something most startups never even get close to. Purity of product, clarity of purpose, and trust at scale.
WhatsApp wasn't just a growth hack.
No, not optimized for vanity metrics or engagement loops. It just worked. Quietly, reliably, privately.
And that quiet power, that unwavering commitment to utility and privacy, it made noise in all the right places.
Exactly. Attracting hundreds of millions of users organically without needing to shout or manipulate, it shows the profound long-term strategic advantage of building with integrity over just chasing short-term gains.
Especially in an industry that's often, let's face it, plagued by ethical compromises.
For sure.
And just look at the outcome. By 2025, Koum's projected worth, $16.5 billion. He built that fortune not by chasing money directly, not by playing the usual game.
But by obsessively protecting his users.
Yeah. In a world obsessed with monetizing attention, turning every click into data, he protected silence. In an age of increasing surveillance and data extraction, he chose unbreakable default encryption.
And when immense pressure came from powerful partners, market expectations, literally the biggest tech company in the world that now owned his company.
He didn't bend.
That's not just smart product thinking, that is power thinking. Pure assertion of control and principle in a landscape that often prioritizes profit and growth above all else.
Because in a world where everyone's trying to be louder, grab your attention, extract your data,
the one who dares to stay quiet, the one who builds on integrity and unwavering user trust, becomes utterly impossible to ignore.
It's such a profound counter-narrative to the usual tech story.
It really is. Reminds us there's more than one way to succeed, and sometimes that road less traveled, paved with firm no's, leads to the most enduring wins.
So Jan Koum didn't just build an app, he built this powerful, undeniable statement. A statement that, in a world addicted to noise and distraction, simplicity still really matters.
Deeply.
That in an era of surveillance and data exploitation, privacy isn't just a right, it's power, a non-negotiable asset.
Yeah.
And that saying no, that deliberate, principled no to things that dilute your vision, can sometimes be the single most profitable move you make, financially and personally.
He didn't chase headlines, didn't scale at all costs, didn't sell his users, their data, or his soul.
And yet he won.
Yeah.
Became one of the richest people on earth, not by out hustling, but by out focusing, by staying true to these deep, unshakable principles.
So what's the real takeaway here for you, our listener? I think it's that you don't have to do it like everyone else does.
Right.
You don't have to be the loudest voice to be heard. You don't need to follow every trend to build something timeless and valuable.
And crucially, you don't have to compromise your core principles, your integrity, to win big.
Sometimes the most powerful strategy is just to build quietly, protect fiercely what you believe in, and have the conviction to walk away when something's no longer right. For you, for your product, for whatever you're creating.
So if you're building anything, a product, a business, maybe just shaping your career or your life, remember Jan Koum's story. You don't have to chase the spotlight or the vanity metrics or all the noise. You can build with real intention. You can protect what truly matters to you. You can say no to things that dilute your vision or compromise your values and still succeed in a way that feels authentic and rewarding and impactful.
Jan Koum didn't play the Silicon Valley game. He built his own rules, defined by those unwavering principles and that deep understanding of user needs.
Yeah.
And the world eventually came to him, not because he was loudest or flashiest, but because his product and his principles were just unshakable.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe ask yourself, what will you protect above all else?
And what will you absolutely refuse to compromise no matter what the perceived cost might be? Because maybe the real question isn't just how much you can gain,
But how much of yourself you're willing to keep?